Welcome to another episode of Who's There? Horror Stories and Reports, where shadows come alive and the whispers in the walls have much to tell. Plaza Sendero Apodaca parking. Lot, my name is Felipe. I'm 22 years old. I study business administration at night, and to get by, I work as a valet at Plaza Sendero Apodaca on weekends. The job is one of those tough ones, the asphalt heat rising up to your face, people in a hurry tossing their keys into my hand, cars honking in line, and all of it mixed with the scent of cheap fabric softener from the car seats. It's the type of work that always feels the same, like a repeated scene from a soap opera. But at least it helped me save some cash to pay part of my tuition without having to depend on my parents. Like most students, I used to joke around with my co-workers. An empty parking lot after midnight, only ghost cars left. But no one took it seriously. It was just a way to get a laugh in the middle of all the exhaustion. But lately, I started noticing things that didn't seem like a joke anymore. Usually after 10, when the mall hallways are already empty, and only a few half-distracted employees and the crew from the last movie are left, some cars would show up with their doors open or their lights flashing non-stop. What's strange is, I'm always the one doing the last round, checking every single door, pulling the handle to make sure, just like protocol says. I knew exactly which cars were there, even the roughest ones, since their owners worked the booths. But suddenly, no warning, 2 hours later, I'd come back to check and find headlights on or the passenger door half open, like something out of a zombie movie. It wasn't just carelessness. There's no way it was a coincidence happening that. Often I told Eduardo, my supervisor, thinking he would laugh. But for the first time I saw an adult look back at me with real uncertainty in his eyes. He suggested we check the security footage that same night. We stayed together in that cramped little room, the monitors gleam on our faces, watching the routine flow of cars. Then, around 2:30, we saw a dark shadow rushing quickly between two SUVs just before the alarm on an old Beetle started going off. It was just a blur, nothing you could make out clearly. But there was something about the speed that made no sense. It didn't look like someone running, more like the image glitched for a second. After that, going back to work the same way got tough. The co-workers who were cracking jokes just days before started sharing similar stories in the WhatsApp group. One guy, Nito, said he felt chills crossing the second row of cars after midnight. Another talked about hearing footsteps when he was alone on the ground floor. Someone else swore they'd heard heavy breathing by the back wall. The result was that no one wanted to do the rounds alone at dawn anymore. Everyone started coming up with excuses about needing the bathroom or having a backache. I also started avoiding looking in the rearview mirrors. Not sure if I can explain it, but that sense of being watched became a regular part of my weekend routine. What used to be routine turned into this silent tension among the employees. Even the ones who used to joke that ghosts love SUVs started hanging rosaries from their mirrors or blasting music on their phones during rounds, just so they wouldn't have to wander in the total silence of an almost empty lot. I built my own rituals too. I'd check the locks twice, avoid passing near the cars that gave trouble, and during the rounds I'd hold a key between my fingers, not because I thought it would help with anything, but so I'd feel like I had at least a little control. Still, sometimes my stomach would drop when I walked alone into a dark bay, and I'd glance quickly at the back seats, not even sure if it was just nerves or if I really expected to see something. One night, a white Polo set off its alarm 3 times in less than 10 minutes. I thought someone was playing around, but there was nobody nearby, not even a bird's shadow passing under the lights in that part of the parking lot. When I went to check again, I noticed footprints around the car. That didn't match our uniform. Big dirty sneakers, different from the black ones we use. Eduardo tried to calm everyone down, saying maybe someone had tried to steal something. But the strange thing was nothing was missing, not a scratch, nothing out of place. Just that lingering feeling that, even with the camera rolling there, would always be a blur, always something unclear. Little by little, it became a forbidden topic during breaks, as if just bringing it up would bring it closer, and everyone started dealing with it their own way, with something that had no explanation. The next Saturday I got to my shift feeling heavy, not sure if it was lack of sleep or just that weird vibe in the air. I noticed rounds were slower, each co-worker delaying their turn to patrol the spots at the back. The radio barely crackled at night. Before we'd make jokes, now silence was the rule. Like any sound might get the attention of something nobody wanted to see on the screen again. On one of my rounds, I saw a car with the hazard lights on. It was a silver Corolla, car of a lady who always gives me her keys every Friday. I remembered perfectly turning everything off and closing the door myself just a few hours earlier. Even though I didn't want to, I had to go check it out. As I got closer, I caught this sweet scent in the air, strange, almost sickly sweet, something I'd never smelled in the parking lot before. I bent down to look under the car, and believe it or not, I saw a shadow darting quickly beneath the wheels, like smoke curling over the ground, but with no noise at all. I froze right there by the Corolla, the sound of the blinkers echoing between the columns. I just stood there a while before I could move again and decided not to tell anyone that night. I just wrote it up in the logbook and pretended I had everything under control. On Monday, during the shift change, Eduardo came up to me holding a small notepad. He flipped through it quickly and showed me that I wasn't the only one reporting weird stuff. In the last 3 weeks, there were short notes from others, almost all the same pattern: lights turning on by themselves, doors found open, the motion sensor going off with no one nearby. So many coincidences that even he, always the skeptic, mentioned the possibility of some general electrical glitch. But then he fell quiet, like the explanation was just to convince himself. Tension grew in the employee group. One person started asking to change shifts. Others suggested hiring another night guard just to do the rounds at dawn. I started doubting my own senses too, going over what had happened and trying to find a logical answer. But still, every time I closed my eyes, that image of the shadow slipping under the Corolla came back, along with an unease I couldn't shake, not even with a cold shower at home. To the outside, Plaza Sendero Apodaca kept running as usual, but just stay there past midnight and you'd feel it. Something was moving around those cars, and it really didn't seem like just superstition. One of the last nights before the holiday break, I talked to the Corolla's owner when she came for her car after my round. I asked her gently if she'd noticed anything strange lately, any issues with her alarm or windows. She smiled but looked thoughtful, saying she'd been getting chills every time she touched her car door in the lot. She figured it was just from being tired, but thanked me for always taking good care of her car. I didn't have the nerve to tell her what was really going on. I just wished her a good night and watched her leave. After that, the new guard started taking over part of the rounds, and the weird reports dropped off. The heavy atmosphere lingered for a few weeks but faded little by little, like maybe the shadow had left or found whatever it was looking for. The group went back to joking around. Even though no one wanted to be alone near the back columns, I kept working, and even though I tried to act normal, I never looked at Plaza Sendero Apodaca as just another parking lot again. Sometimes, when I have some time as I leave, I watch the empty spots and realize some things just stay there, slipping between the cars and the silences, and only people who've spent late nights among dim headlights and endless rounds know you can't always explain everything that haunts a place like this. My name is Carlos, I'm 38 years old, and last year, right at the height of the pandemic, I was going through the most complicated divorce my family had ever seen. I had to move back in with my mum to an old house in the Las Margaritas neighborhood, the kind that always smells like a closed closet and reheated coffee in the morning. It was a bitter new beginning. I swallowed all my pride along with the courage it took to ask my mum to take me in after being gone for so long. The only good thing about being there, at least, was how close Las Margaritas Linear Park was. I always thought maybe walking at night would help me sort out my thoughts and ease that tightness in my chest, that feeling that the world had gotten way too small for me. It was the kind of neighborhood that mixes that small-town vibe with strange rumors, stories about weird people hanging around, animals disappearing, whispers about things seen in the brush after 11 o'clock. But honestly, in those first days, none of that scared me. I decided to go out for a walk every night, more to tire myself out than to find peace. I'd put on my old sneakers, random shorts, and step outside, listening to the crickets and chasing away all the dark thoughts. At first, that was all there was to it. a nearly monotonous routine of footsteps, heavy breathing, and the distant sounds of delivery guys heading home. One of those nights, right after finishing my third lap around the park, I noticed something out of the ordinary. In the middle of the thick vegetation, among the crooked trees that crossed their branches like making a pact, a bluish light started shining deep inside. At first I thought it was someone playing Pokemon Go or something like that, but the light always moved in this weird way, pulsing and disappearing, totally unlike the slow movement of a cell phone. Suddenly, I started to hear muffled voices, sounding like teenagers giggling who didn't want to be seen. I got annoyed. I didn't want any problems with the neighbors, so I started walking over, ready to ask them to quiet down. But just when I was about 5 meters away, the voices stopped dead, as if someone had hit a button. That's when things really started to get strange. The air, which had been warm before, suddenly felt heavy, like I was trying to breathe through a vacuum cleaner bag. Out of nowhere, a low mist appeared, looking just like something from a low-budget horror movie, except I could feel it dampening my calves and leaving a really strange chill in my whole body. In the middle of that thick silence, I heard footsteps running through the brush, quick footsteps, but I didn't see anyone, just the crunch of trampled leaves, and afterward the smell of something burning. It wasn't grilled meat or a campfire. More like someone burning old plastic, a smell you can never mistake. I stood still, arms shaking, heart pounding, trying to figure out where those people went, but there wasn't a trace of anyone. I went back home in a daze, wondering if it was all just in my head, maybe some side effect of stress. But that night, I couldn't sleep well. A weird buzzing stuck in my ear as if the voices had followed me home, and my mind kept drifting back to the burning smell, to those bright flashes in the undergrowth. The next day, I tried to talk about the park with my mum, but all she did was complain like she always does when she's trying to dodge a conversation. She said something like, "That place just isn't like it used to be, Carlos," and changed the subject, washing her hands obsessively the way she does, always leaving the kitchen smelling like bleach. That only made me more nervous. Even so, I kept up the nightly walk, swallowing my fear, convinced that facing it again would free me from those strange sensations. But it didn't work. Almost every night, the lights came back. Now there was more than one, mixing blue with an intense red that flashed like it was angry. I started to hear not just laughter, but soft whispers, as if someone were telling secrets right in my ear. And every time I got close, the same thing happened. Absolute silence, a fresh fog, steps with no owner, and that suffocating smell, which now even made my nose burn as if I'd sniffed chili. I got more and more nervous, and this urge to figure out what was going on kept growing, even though something inside me told me to leave it alone. One Tuesday, after spending the whole day listening to my mom complain about the neighbor for putting flower pots in the shared area, I went out late, past 10. The sky was orange from pollution and the air felt off like it was about to rain, even though there wasn't a cloud in the sky. My head was buzzing with so many thoughts that I didn't even realize when I wandered into the darkest part of the park, where the streetlights didn't even work. That's when I smelled it again, but this time it was way stronger, like someone was burning tires right next to me. My phone started to glitch, the screen flickering, and the battery dropped from 80% to 15% in seconds. I tried to turn on the flashlight, but the device just shut off. I stood perfectly still, sweat running cold down my back, with that desperate feeling that someone was watching me. I heard a branch snap and turned around so fast I almost hurt my neck. That's when I saw 3 blue points of light between the trees, which weren't cell phones like I thought, but more like tiny lamps. Though their light didn't illuminate anything, they just floated there. The voices started up again, but this time I actually caught a few stray words. "He can't see. Come back tomorrow. Let him go." My whole body froze. I tried to scream, but all that came out was a pitiful whisper. The mist started to rise up around my feet, not cold like regular fog, but hot and sticky, like steam from a pot. I took 3 steps back and tripped over a root, falling on my butt. That's when I saw a figure walking among the trees. Couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All I could tell was that it was freakishly tall, and the way it walked was weird, like its knees bent the wrong way. My first instinct was to run, but I just stood there, unable to decide if I'd be safer running or staying put. The silence was so strange, it felt like all the sound had been swallowed up by that mist. The weird thing was, instead of movie-style panic, I just felt this shame for being there, like I was an intruder, and this absurd idea that I was interrupting, something I shouldn't. Right then, I suddenly heard footsteps racing behind me, like someone was running in circles nearby, but I never saw anyone leave. Time lost all sense. I don't know if a minute or half an hour had passed. When I finally dared to get up, my legs were numbed, tingling all the way to my soul. The burning smell grew even stronger, stinging my nose and making me almost want to throw up. I took one step off the path and all of a sudden everything stopped. The mist was gone and the lights switched off like they'd never been there. I was alone, just hearing myself breathe hard, and that's when I realized my hands were sweating so badly I almost dropped my phone while checking the time. The clock showed an hour that didn't add up. I seemed to have lost 20 minutes, though I could have sworn I wasn't there that long. I got home and my mum didn't even notice how I was. She just asked if I wanted some tea. Over time, that whole experience became almost like a secret between me and the park. I avoided talking about it, as if putting it into words would give it power to come back. But even when I kept my distance, some things didn't stop. Some nights the wind would blow in from the park, and the burning smell would seep into my room, mixing with that faint mist nobody noticed but me. I tried to explain it away. Maybe it was the sewers or someone burning leaves, but nothing ever matched the intensity of that smell and that heaviness. Sometimes I'd wake up thinking someone was running beside my bed. Just the sound, with no one there exactly like what I'd heard out in the brush. It turned into a routine, watching the park from my window, counting how many people dared to walk down the hidden paths, always sensing that everyone out there shared the same unease, but nobody wanted to admit it. The neighborhood was never the same again, and even my mum squeezes her eyes shut tighter whenever she walks by the park. I stopped looking for answers. I don't even know if I believe in bad energy or just in coincidences, but ever since that month, I've never seen a dark park as just something neutral. And even now, every time I smell burning for no reason, my whole body tenses up, like something from Las Margaritas is just waiting for me to forget about it. My name is Andre, I'm 42 years old, and I've been a rideshare driver for almost 4 years. My routine really starts when the sun goes down. Apodaca and Juarez are pretty much part of my life by now, with how much I drive that highway, night after night. Anyone who works these hours gets used to the dark asphalt, badly lit road signs, and that strange silence you find in stretches far from the city. But a few weeks ago, I started noticing a pattern that was hard to ignore. Always at the same spots along the Apodaca-Juarez highway, I'd see cars pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking, people frantically checking their dashboards or trying to call their insurance. There was one Sunday where I counted 3 cases, all within almost the same kilometer. That just wasn't normal. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, or that maybe a pothole-ridden stretch was messing up people's cars. But then, I realized it was something else. This problem didn't care about the kind of car, new, old, basic, or luxury. It always happened in that same section, and pretty much always after 11 at night. It even happened to me twice. The first time, my dashboard just went black. Everything went dark for a few seconds, and all I could hear was the sound of my tires on pavement and the lights of a semi getting closer. That sent chills down my spine. The dashboard came back on by itself after a bit, like nothing had ever gone wrong. On another night, my GPS froze. The radio started making weird noises, and I was driving blind for a couple minutes. That bad feeling crept over me, especially after hearing so many co-workers tell the same story in our WhatsApp group. Soon enough, people started calling it the haunted stretch, but jokes aside, nobody wanted to drive through there solo. After the second time, I started heading out from home more nervous, being choosier about which rides I'd accept and weighing if it was worth braving that stretch alone again. The WhatsApp groups would heat up at night. One driver would say his cell signal always dropped right there. Another swore he heard weird interference on the radio, like someone murmuring amid the static. Someone even caught it on video. His Car shutting down out of nowhere, and that video went viral among us. Suspicion only grew. We'd seriously talk about how, if your car broke down there at night, help would take hours to arrive. There were stories of drivers who walked all the way to the nearest gas station in total darkness, and even then, roadside assistance wouldn't get there quickly. Once the stories started spreading outside the groups, the issue gained traction. Tales started circulating about minor crashes, fender benders caused by bad signage, or drivers getting lost after a breakdown, only serving to scare those of us who drove that route almost every night even more. The community put pressure on the authorities, and after so many complaints, they sent out techs to check the pavement, the streetlights, to look for any explanation. But in the end, it was the same old answers. Nothing abnormal was found, all equipment is in perfect condition. But those of us driving at night knew the problem was still there. Every week, someone else would report another scare. At that very spot, and just like many others, I found myself preferring the longer route, just to avoid the risk. Over time, the fear started changing how we worked. Some drivers started only accepting trips as far as the start of the highway, turning down rides to Juarez after 10 at night. Others began sharing their real-time location with friends or family, thinking it would keep bad luck away. I clearly remember a co-worker, Fabian, who decided to challenge the curse. He streamed a live video on social media while driving through the spot where everything supposedly happened. At first he was laughing, making jokes, but as soon as he crossed into the stretch, the screen went black with just the weird static from the radio left. The live stream crashed after just a few minutes, only coming back when he'd made it to the other side. His car running like nothing had ever happened. That was enough to turn the story into a local legend among drivers. Despite all the jokes and tension, no one truly had an explanation for all the breakdowns. It was as if the highway had a life of its own, choosing when and whom to mess with. Some started looking for esoteric answers, having a priest bless their car. Others claimed it was all because of an old underground wiring problem, while the skeptics demanded report after report from the authorities. The strangest part was that it always happened there, in that forgotten stretch, and while everyone acted like they didn't care, you just couldn't shake the feeling that whether or not there was an explanation, something weird took control. There every night. One early morning, after a heavy rain had left the pavement gleaming under the dim streetlights, there was no way to avoid that stretch. The fare was worth it, and my passenger urgently needed to get home. I was quietly praying for things to go smoothly, but as soon as I got close to that usual spot, the dashboard flickered, made some noises, and shut off completely. This time, I didn't panic. I just slowed down, let the car coast, and felt that suffocating silence. Those few minutes felt like forever, until the dashboard slowly started coming back to life, as if the power was being returned little by little. The passenger, nervous, preferred not to say anything. He just whispered a "thank you" at the end of the ride, and I breathed a bigger sigh of relief than ever before. After that night, I changed my usual route. I started looking for times with more traffic and avoided that part of the highway whenever I could. The reports died down over time, maybe because fewer people were passing through, or because everyone realized it just wasn't worth the scare. The authorities never found anything strange, and life kept going on as usual in Juarez and Apodaca. But for those of us who keep driving late into the night, one lesson stuck. There are stretches of the road where the silence carries a weight that not even high beams can break. My name is Anna. I'm 29 years old and I'm an elementary school teacher here in Apodaca, Nuevo León. I live alone in an old yet beautiful house, inherited from my grandparents, right on the corner of Rio Grijalba Street in the Pueblo Nuevo neighborhood. This is the kind of neighborhood where neighbors greet each other every day, where you can still hear the radio playing on front porches at sunset, and the scent of fresh tortillas fills the streets. My routine is usually peaceful. I spend all day at school and at night. After a quick dinner, my company is stacks of student work, scribbled notebooks, and the warm light from my lamps. I appreciate the quiet, the simplicity, and the slow passage of the nights around here. Everything started to get strange on a Friday that seemed like any other, except for the heavy winds and orange storm sky. I came home from work exhausted, just thinking about taking a shower, and that sweet bread smell wafting over from Sergio's bakery on the corner. That's when I noticed something different on my front gate. Handprints smeared onto the white painted iron. They weren't children's prints or dirt from a dog. They were big greasy marks with the fingers kind of spread as if someone had been gripping tightly. What was strangest was that they were always facing inward, as if that person, or whatever it was, had stayed there a while, paying careful attention to my house before disappearing. Slowly, things just got more uncomfortable. Every time I'd come home from work, especially after dark, I stared with a tight stomach at that gate, expecting to find those greasy handprints yet again. Some nights they weren't there, and I'd almost convinced myself it was just a neighborhood kid playing a prank to spook me. But then on some random Monday, there they'd be again, clearer every time, shining under the yellow streetlight. On the corner, I started getting paranoid, checking the security camera over the gate every single day when I'd get home. But in the videos, you'd never see anything. Just tree shadows moving or some car crawling down the street. The tension built inside me, like a knot. I started sleeping badly, waking up in the middle of the night from noises that could be branches, a cat, or maybe something else. I thought about telling my mom, who lives nearby, but she just laughed and said it was because I was way too lonely. That was until the weirdest thing happened on a rainy night. I decided to install one of those doorbell cameras that saves video to your phone, thinking I'd finally catch the prankster or clear things up once and for all. It was almost midnight. I was grading tests when the notification popped up. Movement detected at the gate. My heart pounded. I ran to check. And that's when I saw, for the first time, an old man standing there. The doorbell footage was grainy, but you could clearly make out an older man, just standing outside the gate as still as a statue under the drizzle that night. He was wearing a really big brown overcoat, way too big with worn-out edges, and an old hat slanted on his head. The weirdest thing was he didn't do anything. He just stood there staring straight into my yard as if he were waiting for someone or something, I don't know. He stood like that, not moving, for several minutes, long enough for my stomach to twist up and for me to feel like I couldn't quite breathe. Suddenly, a car sped by on the street, splashing water from the pavement. The headlights lit up the old man's face for a moment. He looked lost, sad, wrinkled, and his eyes were so deep they were terrifying. In a matter of seconds, as soon as the car disappeared, the old man was gone. Seriously, he vanished. Not even a shadow crossing the street or turning the corner, just the gate left dripping in the rain. My heart was pounding so hard, and I watched the video at least 10 times, finding no explanation. He literally faded away on camera. That night, I barely slept, waiting for dawn just to make sure it had all really happened. After that night, I felt like everything inside me was on pause. I spent the whole day trying not to think about the video, pretending it was just another weird coincidence. I stuck to my routine, making coffee, grading tests, listening to the distant sounds of the street. But no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, every time I glanced over at the window facing the gate, my stomach turned. The atmosphere in the house changed. The silence that used to feel so comforting now felt heavy, as if that motion alert was about to go off at any moment. That same night, before bed, I decided to quickly check the patio. I swept my flashlight over the plants and noticed more things missing. Small, trivial things. A trowel I always kept in the same corner, a rag I left on the clothesline. All so simple, but the idea that someone or something was moving them sent chills through me in a way that's hard to describe. I felt like it wasn't just something missing. Everything started right when the handprints showed up on the gate. I went back inside and locked all the doors. My heart was racing, my head reeling. What the hell did that old man want with me or my house? Night fell slowly, and even though I locked everything, I couldn't relax. I sat on the couch with my cell phone waiting for that doorbell alert again. Every noise became a signal. A board creaking or the wind scraping the window took on a whole new meaning. I'd never felt so watched, not even when I lived somewhere noisier. Here, in the silence broken only by passing headlights, it felt like the old man, or whatever. He was close, just waiting for me to let my guard down. I tried to distract myself with videos, but everything felt distant, like I was trapped in a bubble. Sometime after midnight, I was startled again by the brief, sharp notification chime from the doorbell. My heart jumped. I grabbed my phone and opened the recording, nearly holding my breath. This time it wasn't the old man standing there. The video just showed a lump, moving fast and kind of crooked, passing in front of the gate, always from the street toward the house, as if it was testing every inch of the gate. It was a blurry shape, impossible to make out a face, but you could tell it didn't walk right. One foot dragging as the other stomped down. I watched that video over and over, frozen, trying to figure out if it was a person or who knows what. Each time I replayed it, fear crawled up my spine. The next morning, the house felt heavier somehow, as if the air had thickened during the night. As soon as I went out to feed my cats, I saw the handprints again. 2 huge, greasy hands marked almost in the same place, the fingers more spread than before. With each new print, I felt my spirits drop a little more. I stood there, catching a strange, rancid smell coming from the stained iron, forcing myself to believe there had to be an explanation, even though everything screamed that there wasn't. I spent the morning restless, not even wanting coffee and just eating whatever, to keep my stomach from feeling empty. That's when I started noticing little things inside the house, stuff I barely paid attention to before. Everyday objects were missing, easy to misplace. A pair of scissors by the entrance, a spare key, even a salt shaker from the kitchen. Every missing item confirmed to me that someone or something was coming through the gate more often than I could keep watch. Waking up to feel like your own house isn't a refuge anymore, at first out of fear and then because of an invisible presence, started to mess with my head. It wasn't just paranoia from living alone anymore. It was a silent warning, happening every day in that little corner of Apodaca that had always felt so safe. Then one hot Saturday, with the wind carrying the smell of wet earth, I decided to do something about it. I put what little I had in the yard in strange places and left the outside lights on, thinking if I looked more alert, maybe all this would stop. I sat in the living room facing the camera waiting. It must have been after 2 in the morning when the doorbell lit up, bathing the front door in that eerie LED glow. I felt a chill run through my whole body, but I didn't check my phone. Instead, I stayed in the hallway holding my breath, straining to hear the faintest whisper of someone outside, almost like those low prayers you hear from neighbors after midnight. Suddenly, a sharp thud, like someone dropping a bucket, and the gate rattled by itself, shaking weirdly. I hid behind the wall, tense as could be, until silence returned. I didn't come back out until sunrise, my face sweaty and my hands trembling. In the yard, nothing had changed. No new traces, nothing moved. I checked everything, from the gate to the tree branches, and nothing. After that night, I never saw the old man again or the shadowy figure or found new handprints or anything else missing. Little by little, the house started to feel normal again, and the silence returned to being just silence, but it never felt quite as comforting. Even now, I don't know what happened. All I know is that after that night, whoever or whatever it was that lingered around my house seemed to decide to leave for good.